Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer. As normal, I'm joined by the one and only football writer and broadcaster Dean Jones to discuss all the latest news and gossip from the world of football. It's been another eventful week on and off the pitch, Dean, in the world of football right now. Thankfully, we were talking about matters on the pitch with Manchester City now reaching the Champions League final and waiting to see if Chelsea will join them in that final.
Absolutely, yeah. Great performance from Man City. They've finally grown as a team, haven't they? It's not just about being an attacking force now. They're so solid defensively as well. I think they've conceded 4 goals throughout the tournament, like ridiculous, really. And just putting out amazing performances every single time. So well deserved to get to the final, but it's only real history if they actually go on and claim the trophy, isn't it? So let's see if they can take that final step.
Yeah, let's see if they can go and complete the holy grail for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola by winning the European Cup in Istanbul. But then after this season finishes, Dean, all eyes will switch to next season and all eyes will again be on the transfer window and what teams can do to try and strengthen their squads to close the gap in Manchester City. One of those teams who is expected to be busy in the transfer window will be Manchester United. And one player who's obviously been linked with United for quite a long time now, Jadon Sancho. His future's been the subject of recent speculation again. Obviously, it was the transfer saga of last summer. Would he or would he not move to Old Trafford from Borussia Dortmund? It seems this one possibly could happen now this year with Dortmund coming round to thinking that this might be the best time to cash in the England international. What's your take on the Jadon Sancho transfer saga?
I don't think it'll be done quickly, so I think get
Oh no.
ready for another transfer saga. I'm not even going to rule out this going all the way through to at the end of the window, just because I think that there's still a lot of negotiating to be done in terms of finding something that makes both parties happy. United do definitely still want Sancho if they can get him. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was so disappointed not to get him last time around. And he still would really like him as part of his setup, and United would like to deliver a player like that to him. So they've been waiting basically the last few weeks to find out what his new value is. Obviously, last year they were looking at like 120 million euros, and they were never going to pay that. And so finally, it's been leaked that the new valuation is 100 million euros, which is about 85 million pounds, something like that. Now, that's still too high, to be honest. United still don't feel that in this market at this time, with no other clubs seriously looking at him like they were, that's a realistic fee for Jadon Sancho. That's what I'm told. So I still think personally that fee needs to drop by about another £10 million if a deal is going to be done. And we'll have to wait to see whether Dortmund have any interest in selling Sancho at sort of £75 million. The only thing I think that might change United's stance here around the fee is the fact that I'm not convinced now that they're going to go and sign a tier A, if you like, centre back, because they've been linked with buying Jules Condé and these people. And we were thinking they were going to spend 40-50 million pound on a new centre back. But now that Eric Bailly has signed his new contract, I think we just expect that this is pretty much United's set up at the back for next season, and that there's going to be Harry Maguire, and it'll be either Bailly or Lindelof partnering him. And if they buy a defender, it's not going to be for 40 million. It'll probably be for 15 million or something like that. That frees up a bit more budget, and potentially you put that into the marquee signing of the summer. Look, the Glazers, like if they are insisting on hanging around, they at least have to deliver a marquee signing this summer to United. I still don't think it will placate the fans much because they're still going to hate them, but the least they can do is deliver a top player. And that's why I think there probably is more chance now than ever of Jadon Sancho actually arriving, as well as the fact that Jadon Sancho wants to leave now. He wants to move on from Dortmund, and Dortmund have got an agreement with him from last summer that if the right move comes along, then he can go.
Yeah, Dortmund director Michael Zorc confirming they had a gentleman's agreement with Jadon Sancho that he could leave for the right price this summer as well. But does a lot depend on Dortmund reaching the Champions League, Dean? If they were to qualify, finishing the top four in the Bundesliga, they could maybe demand more money for him. But if they don't qualify for the Champions League and all the money that brings, they might have to take a lower fee for Jadon Sancho. So Manchester United will probably be hoping Dortmund don't qualify for the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean that's true for sure. Dortmund have got two really big games coming up actually, and they're both against RB Leipzig. They've got them in the league, and that's important to try and make the top four. And then they've got them in a cup final as well the following week. So it's a really big week coming up for Dortmund. And Erling Haaland's just had a bit of a knock, and he missed their cup semi-final the other day, and there's still talk of him leaving. So a lot of the success over the next week kind of comes onto the shoulders of Sancho and Haaland. They're the guys that are expected to deliver this, well, the top four spot and the silverware. But also, it's those guys that future is up in the air and kind of depends on whether they make these lofty ambitions that the club have been aiming for. I say lofty ambitions, top four should be the least that a club like Dortmund are aiming for, and it's actually a disaster if they don't make it. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that if they don't make top four, then they're going to struggle to have any hope really of getting 100 million euros for Jadon Sancho, because the player's simply not going to want to stick around, and they're going to have to accept that clubs are going to start making offers well below that. And don't forget, United genuinely expected, especially in the first half of this season, that this fee was going to drop closer towards £50 million. That was probably a bit too hopeful, but they were always, the message I was always sent was that United want this fee to drop towards £50 million, not staying near £100 million. So if they're hoping for £85 million at Dortmund, I still think they're being a bit hopeful. I don't know if there's anybody that's going to pay that.
No, not after the COVID effect it's had on the finances of clubs. All the best top clubs in Europe are struggling right now financially. So even 85 million looks a big ask for Jadon Sancho right now. What about the possibility of players in exchange? Manchester United maybe could offer maybe a player or two in exchange for Sancho. Has been talking Van de Beek possibly being linked with Dortmund. Would he be one that maybe United would consider swapping with Sancho?
I personally don't think so. I think Van de Beek will actually work his way into the plans for next season. So I don't see it. A perfect player to go into Dortmund, in terms of what the club stands for, if that's what they want to do. But they have also got a couple of good players already around that position. So I don't know that really fits, to be honest. But I'm not going to discount it, because I think a lot of clubs are going to be looking to use players as part of deals this summer just to knock the price down a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of that in this summer transfer window. I think clubs being creative in the transfer market, offering players in exchange rather than paying upfront cash probably as well. Do you think it's a one-horse race for Sancho? Been a bit of suggestions Liverpool and Chelsea could be interested in the England man as well, or do you think it's a clear path for Manchester United to land him this summer?
If he's going to go to Chelsea, then there's got to be someone leaves, right? Because they've already got like 7 players that play the same kind of position. So I don't see at the moment that he can fit in there. And with Liverpool, I would just have huge doubts about whether they've got this kind of money to spend on a player, because we've seen no signs of them spending, intending to spend this type of money on a new attacker. Look, if Mo Salah or Sadio Mane actually do leave, then that opens the door for a signing like this. But otherwise, no, I just can't see it.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be another long summer of Jadon Sancho headlines and rumours. I think, Dean, this one could drag on, and we know Dortmund do not give up easy on a deal as well. So let's see if Manchester United and Dortmund can finally come to an agreement and we see Jadon Sancho in the Premier League next season. Another player whose future is a topic of hot debate right now is Paul Pogba at Manchester United. He's obviously playing some of his best football in recent years right now for United. He was outstanding in that Europa League win against Roma for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side. He's becoming a key player for Solskjaer on this left side of midfield role that he's found for United. But again, come with his good form comes a debate about his future. Dean, he's just entering the final year of his contract after the end of this season as well. His agent Mina Raiola has come out suggesting that Pogba wants to be playing for a club winning titles on a consistent basis, which maybe Manchester United might be becoming right now if they can win the Europa League and make a sustained challenge for the Premier League. But the rumours of Real Madrid and Juventus refuse to go away, while if he's going to sign a new deal at Man United, there's talk of him maybe getting £400,000 a week, which seems crazy right now. What's your take on Paul Pogba's future at Old Trafford?
I think ideally they'll keep him. I think that Solskjaer would like to keep him. And I think that the club are probably in the position where, look, they paid £89 million for him. How much value have they had out of that deal so far? I don't personally think he's been over the top. his time, an £89 million player, but I also don't think that's his fault. I think that over the course of time, he just hasn't been used well enough by any of the managers that have had him. There has been spells, there was a spell when Mourinho was getting a bit out of him. Solskjaer's finally finding a role for him, but I don't understand why this guy hasn't been built around more. And I think that, as soon as Real Madrid and Juve are being linked with a player, there's a reason for that. It's because one of the best players in the world. And if you've already got them in your squad, then you're probably better off embracing them at a time like this, because how are you going to replace them? What's your plan moving forwards? Pogba's a big part of that squad, and while we haven't seen as much of him on the pitch as we'd have liked, I think he's a big part of the dressing room. He gets on really well with Solskjaer. He likes living in Manchester. His agent obviously is trying to look for other avenues, but that will also be because he's going to get a nice cut of any transfer deal. Have Juve got any money to spend on Pogba? Doesn't look like it. I mean, they're struggling to even make the Champions League places at the moment in Serie A. Real Madrid, I'm not sure that signing Pogba is their priority. So I think there's serious doubts about what kind of landing spots are out there for Pogba right now. And I think that while it sounds pretty ridiculous that you would now give Pogba a 400 grand a week contract based on what he's actually achieved in his time there, which is basically a League Cup and a Europa League trophy so far, which isn't what he was signed for. He was signed for Premier League and Champions League. Maybe you just keep plugging along with it, to be honest, and you go again and you try to finally make things click around him.
Yeah, it's been quite a turnaround probably in the last 12 months, Dean, because I think last summer, we were both pretty adamant that we expected Paul Pogba to leave Manchester United at the end of this season. And obviously, COVID's had an effect on clubs' finances. As you mentioned, the likes of Juventus and Real Madrid probably struggling to afford Paul Pogba right now. And that might come into his thinking as well. Does he stick around at Manchester United, get that big contract, which is maybe being put in front of him right now? But I don't think anybody would have envisaged this. Last summer, I think everybody was expecting a departure for Paul Pogba.
Yeah, totally. And I think, some people still will be, to be honest. There'll be United fans that obviously haven't been to the stadium for so long, and they won't be sure whether by the time they get back there properly in August, whether Pogba's still going to be a United player, and they might have seen the last of him in person. But there's been so much flirting and so much, I guess, fake news around him that I'm just not convinced anymore where it's going. And I think we're all quite bored of hearing his agent speak out. I think United probably are as well at times. I think what also complicates this, to be honest, is the whole situation around Ed Woodward and the fact that he's leaving United. Where does that leave the club in terms of negotiating this? I presume that Woodward is still heavily involved in it and would be involved in the negotiations to get him to stay. But from Pogba and Raiola's stance, they'll be like, yeah, but you're not going to be here. Who are we going to be dealing with? What's the actual vision for this club? I do think that adds an extra layer to this that hasn't really been discussed too much so far, and will definitely have to be in the thinking of what Pogba wants to do for the next stage of his career, which, let's face it, is the most lucrative 3 or 4 years of his career.
Yeah, I think Paul Pogba right now, until football resets, I can't see many teams out there able to afford the Frenchman right now. But on the other side of that, Manchester United would be a big outlay if they were going to pay Paul Pogba £400,000 a week. It would make him the highest paid player at the club. We've obviously seen the issues they've had with David De Gea being given that lucrative contract on £350,000 a week, and now it looks like they're trying to offload him, but they won't be able to find too many takers at those wages as well. Does that cause a bit of unrest maybe in the group, given those big wages are? Because I'm sure Bruno Fernandes is going to be knocking on the door thinking, well, where's my big deal then?
Yeah, I think they're quite lucky with Bruno Fernandes that he doesn't seem to have the kind of ego of some people that would in his shoes. So I think that there's definitely going to come a time when he gets a bump up on his contract, but it's probably not going to be to these terms. And you wonder why not, because he's offering far more to the team than any of these top earners are. Even Cavani is probably earning more than Bruno Fernandes. So it is tricky, but this is what comes as part and parcel of a club like Man United. And when you're constantly chasing big names, it's the same with Jadon Sancho. You've got to take into the equation what he's going to want as well, how it changes the wage structure. At the end of the day, I think players just have to trust their agents to make sure that they are getting a decent deal that's on par with other players. And if they're not, they've kind of got to take it out with their agent and not with the club.
Yeah, I'm not too sure many Man United fans will trust Mino Raiola after what's happened before in the past. But it's going to be a big decision ahead for Manchester United and Paul Pogba this summer, as the midfielder enters the final year of his contract at Old Trafford as well. Another big name whose future has been the subject of debate recently, Dean, is the star of the weekend, Gareth Bale, who showed his class with a superb hat-trick against Sheffield United for Tottenham. Obviously, he's on loan at Tottenham until the end of the season. He's due to go back to Real Madrid as part of that deal, but I think more talk now suggesting that Tottenham have first option to extend that loan for a second season, and whoever the new manager is at Tottenham will obviously make that call with Daniel Levy to keep Gareth Bale. But I think you're more of the thinking that this is almost a done deal, that Gareth Bale will be remaining at Tottenham.
Yeah, to be honest, this is almost guaranteed, I think, at this point. Tottenham do have first option to take Gareth Bale again next season. Not only that, they've got first option to take him on exactly the same terms that they got him this time around, which, to be honest, is unbelievable negotiating from Daniel Levy. And I know that a lot of Tottenham fans get very frustrated with him and over his stance on transfers. But the way he dealt with getting Bale back to Tottenham was really impressive. And I know that we haven't seen enough of Bale this season for what they've been paying him. But there are little tricks that he pulled, like when in the first month of joining Tottenham didn't have to pay any of his wages. Real Madrid paid the whole lot because Daniel Levy said, well, look, the player's not fully fit. I'm not paying him. So it basically saved him £1 million in the first month, not paying Gareth Bale any of his wages and trying to get him fit and fitting in the rest of the squad. And it's little things like that Levy has up his sleeve that often goes unnoticed and unwritten, but is worth knowing that he is pretty smart. And it's the same with this trigger that he has to get Bale back next season. I'm almost certain that he's going to do it. Obviously, once fans get back in that stadium, Daniel Levy's dream is to always have Gareth Bale back in Spurs colours, celebrating with the fans. And, you know, from the marketing point of view, it'll be unbelievable. And I also don't think it really matters who the manager is, because I don't think they're going to have much say in this. Jose Mourinho didn't want Gareth Bale back at Tottenham. Even though he didn't want him, he wasn't bothered. He said to Levy, if you want to get him back, then get him back. Yeah. But I don't think it particularly changes my plans. And Levy got him because Levy loves him. And the next manager basically is going to be delivered Gareth Bale, I think, because Bale's loving it. He's become a really integral part of the dressing room. The rest of the lads love him. To be honest, he's pretty low maintenance considering he's such an elite footballer. Like, he's not got really an ego about him around the dressing room and stuff. He's glad to be back.
Just needs a golf course. That's all he needs.
Yeah, he's got plenty of golf courses around where he lives. Maybe not the weather he had in Madrid is the only problem. But I'll be very, very surprised if he's not back next season.
Yeah, and on that as well, Dean, keeping Gareth Bale, would that have any influence on possibly Harry Kane staying at Tottenham? If he sees that Gareth Bale's going to be there next season as well, he might see there's a real possibility that Spurs might have a lot better season next season than they've had this season under new manager.
Yeah, I think Kane needs to be a bit more optimistic about life going forward. Obviously, it will depend on what coach they manage to get through the door, because their vision seems to be a bit all over the place at the moment. When you look at the targets, there doesn't seem to be a clear path that they're going down, even though they say it's a young, emerging, forward-thinking coach. We'll have to see. But yeah, Kane would obviously be pleased to see Bale there. Son, if he's signing a new contract, that's great. I think Dele will be back in the plans now. And having all those players around him will definitely encourage Harry Kane to stay. I'm still not 100% convinced that anyone's capable of signing Harry Kane anyway, because Levy's just not going to sell him, as far as I can tell, to another English club. And if they were to, it's going to be an extraordinary amount of money, which nobody's got right now. I saw he's been linked with Man United, and I'm sure that United would love to have Harry Kane up front, but I just don't see that they can afford Harry Kane getting him out of Tottenham, and I can't see Daniel Levy selling him to him. So, yeah, I think there's a very good chance too that Kane will be there, and we'll be seeing both of them at White Hart Lane next season.
Yeah, the Spurs fans would love to see that at a packed stadium with the fans back in, seeing Harry Kane and Gareth Bale in full flow, which they were against Sheffield United at the weekend. So I'm sure if those two were on fire, Tottenham would be enjoying a lot better season and higher up the table as well. But sticking with Tottenham, I think we're caught by surprise in recent days, Dean, by the news that Jose Mourinho is back in management just 15 days after his sacking at Tottenham. He has ended up back in Serie A as the Emperor of Rome. He's the new Roma manager, Jose Mourinho. Bit of a surprise, this one. I don't think many people saw this one in the offing.
No, it had been mentioned and I'd heard it. I didn't pay too much attention to it because I just wasn't convinced that he would go back into a club job this quickly, to be honest with you. And I know he's not into it right now. He's got until next season and perhaps that suits him. Um, but I also understand that he is actually going to be promised quite large investment in the squad, which tells you why he's going into the job, because it's exactly what Jose Mourinho wants. He wants a guarantee that he can buy some players. And I think that that's kind of what Roma are plotting, from what I can tell. I don't think it's quite going to be on a level of when he first went into Chelsea and was given Abramovich's money, and was able to build that squad and take Chelsea to new levels. But I definitely think that Roma have, big ambitions over the next 3 or 4 years. I think that they need to get themselves into a better spot, and I think that they've spotted a gap here, because at a time when Juve are struggling on and off the pitch, to be honest. Inter Milan, well, they've won Serie A, but they're in trouble financially as well, and there's a chance that team completely crumbles. AC Milan are inconsistent, and you could definitely be up there with them next season. And the teams around them, Atalanta, Napoli, and these sides, there's no reason Roma can't be competing with them. And so I think that what Roma are doing here is they've spotted that Mourinho's available. He's had success in Serie A before. He'd done well at Inter. He won, titles both seasons he was there. He won a treble with Inter Milan. I think that he'll be easier for him to achieve success in Italy at this stage than it will be in England. I think that the intensity of England, I think that the pressure that's on him in England, I think the lack of respect that Mourinho thinks he gets in England isn't that suited to him anymore. And I think that he'll like that in Italy, people do respect him a bit more. And I also think his type of football he plays will probably be more suited to Serie A and more acceptable perhaps to Roma fans as they seek success. So it definitely seems strange. I'm not 100% convinced that it's a good idea and he won't fall out with everybody and be sacked in a year's time.
Never.
But there is some logic as to why Roma are doing this, because they just spotted a gap here to catch up and potentially overtake all the top clubs if this comes together.
Yeah, it's a gamble, I think, on both sides right now. But Roma, who are languishing in 7th place in Serie A this season, they're obviously got to Europa League semi-finals, but it looked like they're going to go out to Manchester United after that 6-2 hammering at Old Trafford as well. They haven't won Serie A since 2001, so Jose's challenge will be to get them back challenging for the title, Dean, and qualifying for the Champions League, I suppose. Do you think he'll end up coming back to the Premier League to look for transfer targets?
Yeah, probably. I mean, definitely can see, that certain players that he's gonna try and sign that we all know. I mean, Matic or somebody will end up signing for Roma, and like as soon as the window's open, Fellaini will probably be linked at some point.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there's certain types of players that Mourinho likes, and I think that they'll be back on board. I don't think we'll see him back in the Premier League managing again, though. I do have to say, I think that might be gone now. I think that it would be very unlikely that Mourinho ever comes back to managing the Premier League.
Yeah, I think he's done his turn in the Premier League with the clubs he's been at, Chelsea, Manchester United and Tottenham. I don't see any of the other big boys probably turning to the Portuguese tactician right now, but I think he'll do this job in Roma and then maybe the Portuguese national team, and that might be Jose's time to bow out after that. But Roma will be hoping he'll be able to roll back the years and bring them back among the big boys in Serie A right now. But sticking with managers, Mikel Arteta at Arsenal's facing a big few weeks and months ahead at the Emirates right now, Dane, hoping to reach the Europa League final and possibly win that to ensure Arsenal qualify for the Champions League. He's obviously come under pressure this season, Dean, because results haven't been good enough for Arsenal, sitting in 9th in the Premier League. They're not going to qualify for the Champions League through the top 4. What's your take on Arsenal? I think it's a big summer ahead for them, not just in the transfer window, but for Mikel Arteta as well.
Yeah, I mean, Mikel Arteta's Arsenal were just consistently inconsistent, aren't they? And that's a major, major problem for them. 9th in the league just isn't good enough, especially a season when it's been so open and there's been such an opportunity to get into that top 4. You know, you can't have West Ham knocking on the door and not have Arsenal knocking on the door. That doesn't make sense, especially some of the investment that they've made in the last few years and big players like Partey and Pepe. Getting Odegaard in, you should be doing much better than that. And yeah, I mean, if they won the Europa League, it would go some way to making up for that. But I mean, I just can't see it happening. Just don't see Arsenal winning that trophy. So if they don't, it leaves them with a big problem going into next season because Arteta's job is safe. Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm told that there's been no thought of changing him at this point. And if he's still in charge, then fine. If you're going to stick with this philosophy that he seems to have, then fine. But there's going to be players leaving the club, and they might even be big name players like Lacazette. And they've got to replace those players. And I'm not sure, to be honest, who's going to be wanting to join Arsenal right now. Because I don't think you can be sure in the direction of the club. I don't think you're going to have Champions League football. You might not even have any European football, to be honest with you, at this rate. And you're just asking, like, where's this club going? Like, I don't know what type of player you're attracting right now. And I think that's a huge problem. Even if Kroenke decides to give the club a bit more money to spend in the window, which I think is probably going to happen on the back of the protests and stuff. I think he will feel under pressure to do that. And I think he probably will do that. Don't think it's particularly going to help because all they'll probably end up doing with that money is overpaying for a player that they probably would have got cheaper anyway, like Pepe. Like, paying 72 million for Pepe was absolutely ridiculous because he wasn't worth half of that at the time, and Lille knew he wasn't. They paid it, so that's how I would see that money being spent, judged on what we've seen in recent times. It's a strange time for Arsenal. It really is.
Yeah, very difficult time for the Gunners to see everybody else. They're sort of playing catch up now among the rest of the Premier League, as you said, seeing West Ham challenging for the top four, Leicester City in the top four as well, and the other big rivals of Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, you would imagine will all be a lot stronger next summer as well. So it's going to be a hard job for Mikel Arteta, as it's difficult to persuade top players to come to your club if you're not in the Champions League or competing at the top end of the Premier League at least as well, Dean. So I don't know. I think if they don't get off to a strong start next season, there will be serious question marks over his own position and his future at Arsenal as well. And I think he's been key. He's helped to get Martin Odegaard over the line on loan. I think he was pretty instrumental in that. I think they're going to need Arteta to be quite creative again in the transfer market, maybe to convince players to come to and play in his project at the Emirates.
That's exactly it. Yeah, they're going to literally be relying on Arteta's, persuasive tactics and chats with players and personal relationships to try and get in big, good quality players. And that shouldn't really be the case at Arsenal, that you having to say, we can't really sign anyone, mate. Could you make a few calls? It shouldn't really be in his job. Yeah, it shouldn't really be what he does in this day and age. I know it used to happen with people like Harry Redknapp, but there's not many managers that are making their own calls these days to pull a few strings and get people in. But he did have to do it with Odegaard. It worked. Could he even persuade, after what Odegaard's seen in recent months, would he even be persuaded to stay? I'm not so sure. I think he was happy at first, but as the season's worn on, I'm not so sure he'll want to remain part of that project. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's a really interesting time for Arteta, and I agree. I think that if you go into next season, things aren't any better, then you're going to have fans back in there, and they'll be letting you know every single week exactly what they think.
Yeah, I think a lot of managers have survived longer than they expected this season because there's been no fans in the stadium. So they've taken that. It's been a blessing for them in disguise, probably having no fans in the stadium right now. But yeah, massive summer ahead for Arsenal on and off the pitch, I think, for them to try and get things right to close the gap on their rivals. Right, but that's us for another week here on Touchline Talk. We'll be back next week for more insight on the latest goings on the world of football.